name is Jacqueline Darenville Hayfron from the Kids Haven. Welcome to the Kids Haven Throw In, which is an informative program geared towards institutions that would like to go to the kids industry. Click the link below just to watch other videos that we have loaded on all our social media platforms from last week. So today, in our session 2 of our color palette, we'll be talking about how color can actually affect children's behavior. Colors can make kids very excited, bored, hyperactive, etc. In fact, kids are very vibrant when it comes to colors. So when they see the red, the orange, the blue, the purple, they are very vibrant when they see these colors. They enjoy colors. There's no one who can actually enjoy colors like kids. Trust me. Actually dealt into so many things concerning colors and their positive vibe and their negative vibe. But as I said, we are going to look at how kids actually behave with colors. So kids normally get excited and more curious when they see colors. Have you ever given a toy to a child, maybe in the color red or color yellow? They keep looking at it, trying to figure out how the molds were done, what kind of. You see that colors would do impact on kids positively or negative. So through their memory, through emotions, and through cognition. We're going to start with the color red. How we saw last week that color red actually gives the positive vibe of energy, excitement, and all that. But we want to see what red actually impacts on children's abilities. So when a color red is given to kids, maybe a toy or a learning equipment that has the color red, it excites them. Okay, it excites kids. It makes them very active. Red, when it's exposed, let's say you expose too much of red, can give a negative impact. It will actually cause distraction to kids. It will distract them a lot. So imagine putting red in a classroom where it's supposed to be a place of calmness, so they can actually be able to learn or to adapt whatever the teacher is teaching or the tutor is teaching. If we put too much of splash of red there, it will cause a lot of distraction. So something like red, I don't want to go into it too much because next week we'll be looking at various institutions, various parts within institutions, and what kind of colors we should be looking at. Now, so if we're going to use a lot of red, I would suggest that a lot of red can be placed in like a playground setting. So a playground within schools, a playground within churches, a playground within maybe a health center if they do have one, or even a playground within homes. Orange. Orange actually brings out happiness in kids. So the impact of orange and the kids' behavior is that it brings out a lot of happiness and enthusiasm. Now, usually kids that love orange are very extroverted kids. They are very bubbly. They like to come out to do things or say stuff. So they really love the color orange. So it's also an idea to tell what kind of type of temperament a child has using colors. So children that usually love orange are very extroverted kids. Also, the color orange can also be used to teach children to bring out the boldness in them, the confidence and all of that. It also has a creative or creativity feature within the orange. So let's say you have, it would be ideal for an art room, so probably where the kids come in to demonstrate their artistic inbuilt ability. So probably maybe dancing, music, or artwork. It would be really nice to paint a room with that type of color. So as I said, we'll really go into it when it comes to institution by institution. Orange would also be a very dynamic color or a good setting for a playground center. So a playground center can usually have a red color and an orange color. We're going to look at the color yellow. Yellow is also a very vibrant color for kids. It actually helps to improve the memory of kids. So usually, if you've realized, there are lots of learning aids or equipment that usually have a lot of yellow in it. It helps cognitively, helps children to improve their memory. When kids are actually exposed to yellow, it gives them a sense of joy, some kind of happiness. It also makes certain kids very bubbly, just like the color orange. But it also has a negative impact on children. If there's too much yellow or overly used yellow in a certain setting like a calm area, it would actually depict or bring out certain destructive behaviors. So let's say if you overly use yellow in a place like a baby room or a bedroom for kids, it will cause a lot of distraction or certain behaviors that you wouldn't want to see. So it can actually lead into anger and frustration for a lot of kids when it comes to overly used yellow. So yellow in its sense, it's brings out joy and happiness in them, but it will also connote a certain negative behavior when it's overly used in a certain setting. We'll look at the color green and its positive impact and the negative impact as well. When we look at the color green, last week we realized that it connotes health and safety. It actually has a calming effect, so it actually calms the kids. It makes them feel very safe. It's a very good color when I'll put it under cognition because it helps a lot with calming children's concentration when it comes to using green in a classroom setting. It also, because of the calming effect, it will be good for using like a sleeping area within like a school or a different setting that has a sleeping area for babies or kids because of its calming setting. Also, it's a very good color when it comes to bedrooms. I could be using the color green when it comes to setting up my children's bedroom. So the color green, different shades of color green, not overly used color green, would also give a very calming effect. We'll be looking later on in how we can blend colors with artwork as well. So they have different blends and it has different impact on children as well. So let's look at the color blue, my favorite color. It also, we saw that it has a calming effect. It helps um, the children calm down. So it would be a very good color when it comes to sleeping areas as well. So if you've looked at it with children's bedrooms and what we have on our IG pages, you realize that before we use any artwork or a splash of artwork or putting a concept over a wall, we would usually make the background look a shade of a type of blue. And it actually has a calming effect. It helps them to sleep. It brings down a lot of anxiety in children. Colors that we have mentioned, we haven't really gone into all the colors, but we've taken certain primary colors and soft tone colors, and we've talked about them in the past weeks. But all of these colors, do they actually sit well or really appropriate for children with certain disabilities? So from last week, we've been looking at kids with ASD, that is autism spectrum disorder. So does it really work with them? What are their behaviors? Will it trigger certain crises? And we've also been looking at children with epileptic symptoms. So let's start with ASD, that is autism spectrum disorder. What can actually cause all of these spikes or all of these crises happening? With ASD would have a visual defect and will cause their crisis when certain colors are actually used. So with kids in that category, duller colors would be appropriate for them. So colors like gray, white, colors that would bring out a lot of comforting atmosphere. If you go splashing orange, red, and probably certain, primary colors, not all of them, but the ones that would speculate a lot of vibrant colors would actually spike or bring out their crisis. So green would be an okay color for children in that category. So dollar colors, as I said, white, gray, neutrals, pink, probably pastel colors, lavender, all of those colors will be appropriate for them. just for them not to have a defect when they look at these colors. I would also like to recommend, though we'll be talking about that next week, that if you have these type of kids in your school or in church, I believe that in church we're all praying for kids to be healed, but then also before healing comes, we need to think about what to do with them. So there should be certain areas that are created like a sensory. They are just specially designed environments that provide sensory experience for kids. So I use the word sensory again. It comes from the words the five senses. So all the five senses, how all of that can come together to help them to be able to communicate very well, because children with ASD actually have intellectual disability and they don't communicate well. So putting them in this setting or in this sensory room enables them to do that easily. Now, we have different types of sensory room, but I would recommend the interactive sensory room where you have certain objects, things they can play with, and sometimes you have what we call the visual sensory room. So you have all the lights and all of them that actually help the kids with ASD. Those same sensory rooms can also be built for kids with epileptic symptoms, but not the flashing lights. We'll come to that. Kids in a sensory room actually gives them the positive attitude to things. So in that sensory rooms, we can actually have sensory toys in there, and those toys can have certain bright colors. So some of the colors in terms of it could be red or orange, but a toned down color. It actually helps them, appeals to their any of their five senses to help them communicate very well. Now, as I said, there are certain colors that we need to use. I'll mention them again. Colors, neutral pastel colors, pink, white, gray, and a very toned down blue and green can be used when it comes to ASD kids. So we're going to look at kids having epileptic symptoms. What type of colors would really work with them? They have certain similarities with kids with ASD, but the only thing is that with kids with epilepsy, do some crises are spiked up by visual effects. So too much light, too much color can also cause it. So that's why I mentioned earlier on that in sensory rooms, we may have certain flashing lights for children with ASD, but not in the same regard with epileptic children. Children with or living with epilepsy. So with epilepsy, there are types of epilepsy. Because we're talking about color, we'll look at photosensitive epilepsy. That type of epilepsy, there are various things that actually trigger their crisis. One of it is their visual patterns. So when we talk about visual patterns, we're talking about color, obviously. So certain colors on objects, certain colors on walls, certain artwork colors can actually trigger their crisis. Another thing is the flashing of light. So as I mentioned, with a sensory room, for an ASD child, you may have to have certain flash lights in there. But when it comes to children living with epilepsy, it will be very difficult to put that in a sensory room because these visual effects would actually trigger their crisis. So as I would suggest, colors like lavender. Lavender is the brown color for children living with epilepsy. So brown color like lavender, purple, they are good colors for them. It actually gives them the calming effect that does not allow them to get or their crisis with them. We've come to a close in this session of color palette. Next week, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking at the use of certain colors in different institutions. So for example, if we take a school, what color would be very conducive for a play area or a reception area or probably a baby room? So we'll be looking at all that. We'll take institutions like schools, health center, play center, etc. Maybe about 4, and then we'll look at that. Very soon we'll come your way with the types of artwork we may be using with the type of colors. See you soon and have a blessed week.